I can't stand being alone. I just been living life, feed a bankroll. How the saying go, got it flooded to my ankles. Need a raincoat, pair of boots and a dang bow. Gotta stay flow.
Hi, welcome to Get Cracking podcast. We are on the mission to accelerate each one of us to happiness. And today we have another wonderful guest. Leigh, welcome.
Hey mate, how you doing?
Doing great. And then before we tune into actual discussion, we have a tradition on our podcast is that everybody who comes on the pod, they need to introduce themselves in 60 seconds. Are you ready for that?
I believe so, yes. Yes.
Okay, so then please introduce yourself.
Okay, so my name's Leigh. I'm from Australia originally, been living here in Finland for 15 years. I fell in love with the cold, with cold weather and cold water. And then through my love and exploration of the cold, I stumbled across breathing because breathing is such a key component of the cold and handling that. Then I dive really, really deep into breathing. So nowadays I've become like, my mom thinks I'm kind of like special individual because I'm teaching the Eskimos, Finnish people about cold, and for the rest of the world, it's about free air, selling free air to people, teaching them how to breathe actually. So I'm breathing as a therapy, breathing as a experience, as a sports performance and things like this. So it's a busy world. There's a lot of people that need to breathe.
Yeah, and then the way I see it and the way I find it is like super interesting to have this conversation because you help basically people live longer through the certain techniques. So you help us be more healthy and live longer, which is kind of ultimate goal, which is super cool.
Yeah.
But then something I really want to also ask straight away. So how did you find out that this is for you? So what was this beginning? Did you just wake up and say like, hey, I want to do this? Or how did it happen?
No, it was a little bit by like some lovely colleagues of mine put pressure on me, and they were the ones who said, okay, like let's get the Aussie guy. Finnish people thought it was funny to throw the Aussie guy to the cold in the winter time here in Finland, because in Australia we don't experience any cold like we do here in Finland. And so basically to prove them wrong, I started to kind of force myself to go to the cold. So for all the wrong reasons in a way, I was kind of a little bit like kind of motivated to prove them wrong. But what ended up happening was I learned so much about myself during the process, and it just became like I can't live without it now. So that was also my kind of initiation to get to kind of land here in Finland as well, I would say, because you can't be here with not accept the weather here,
And it's already some time happened, and then also I heard that you actually have been practicing with Wim Hof himself.
Yeah, so like after many years of like making all the mistakes myself and learning and, all of that, experiencing cold in many different ways, I wanted to kind of put the pieces together. I knew I felt good, like it gave me so much physically and mentally, but then like how to kind of arrange that or how to learn about that from the scientific point of view. And it was funny because I wouldn't say Wim's a very scientific person at all. He's in a way like considered a daredevil of sorts because he's been doing maybe 23 Guinness Book of Records to do with the cold, like length of time in the cold.
Can you give us some example? I know some, but for the listeners, can you give examples of his crazy records?
Yeah, he's been Mount Kilimanjaro in record time. And he took like a group of people there.
And was he also underwear, or did he wear anything?
Yeah, that's true. He wore shorts, shoes, and I think maybe a hat on that occasion. But he's also been, in like the most famous one he did was when he was up to his neck in a clear container, and they just kept putting ice there. They have his whole body, all of the measurements of his body, heart rate, rate of breath, everything like this. And then he was just stayed in there for like an hour, no problems.
Wow.
So,
and then some of us struggle with like going for a cold shower for 30 seconds in the morning. Imagine.
Yeah. But he has a story too. Like he lost his wife. She had killed herself, and he kind of like had this like I don't give up beep kind of attitude in a way, and his relationship with pain was kind of like he was questioning this relationship with pain. He was like, well, I'm going through this deep pain because of my wife, and yet people are kind of going into cold water and they can't handle that. You know, they think that's pain. So he had this kind of interesting play between what really pain is, you know, and of course that led him to do some pretty miraculous things with the cold.
How was it for you? So I think so you got to cold exposure from the different angle, not from pain angle. And I think this is probably a better way to approach it. But have you figured out for yourself this relationship with the pain and with the cold and maybe mental pain and a physical pain from other areas of your life?
It's an interesting one. It's for me personally, I would say, yeah, because through that process of forcing myself to go to the cold, when I said, okay, I don't have to do it anymore, I felt like something was missing. I was like, actually, I kind of feel like I want to go back there again. It wasn't like there was no pressure for me to perform in front of anyone else or anything. But I was like, okay, I need to continue doing this. And then through that process, it just became like a window of time during the day where I just had that, 3, 4, 5, 10 minutes to myself. It was almost like a meditation. And I'm a very typical masculine figure, like if I feel something, if I feel some emotion or whatever, back in the old days, I would just kind of mobilize or activate myself, and you kind of distract yourself from what's really going on. And somehow that, there is a bit of a challenge there when you go to the cold, obviously, a physical challenge, but a mental challenge, especially if you're going in the morning. But through that whole process, it kind of gave me this window of time for myself. And I've never been good at meditating, but that was the closest I got in those early days to meditating before I kind of got into breathing and all of that path. So
this is super interesting because I heard a lot about the cold exposure being super helpful for immune system and then inflammatory disease, and but then now you say about also the mental state and then also like a borderline with actual meditation. This is interesting. But for listeners and for myself more, would you open up what is the real benefit of a cold exposure?
Yeah, so if you want to go to the highest value that you would get from that, it is actually the inflammation in the body. So you probably remember if you roll your ankle or hurt yourself, your mom gives you like the bag of peas or something wrapped up, and you apply that to the ankle. Well, in the same way, but on a deeper level, inflammation is kind of suppressed with the cold. Then through the studies with Wim, they have found out that you can actually suppress the innate immune system, which is the production of white blood cells in the body, which of course everyone's body is producing those because of anxiety, stress, and the body's way of kind of anticipating a threat. But the problem is we haven't developed really good ways to kind of mitigate that or kind of downregulate those. So apparently with the cold, this is how it's happening, and that's because of the rising levels of adrenaline, and the stress hormones actually play a positive role there. So that's the number one thing. And the immune system is strengthened from this, of course. Then also we look at the metabolic health of somebody and how the body uses energy and it uses fat in a way in the body, because fat is energy. So it's very, very good at accelerating that process. So fat loss and fat burning, sure, but metabolic health as a whole. And then you've got other sort of if you want to call them a bit superficial things, it's good for tightening the skin and, collagen production in the skin, things like that. But there's many, many things that we still don't know exactly the benefits of this.
But we don't know because there is not enough, let's say, research, or it's just because of time that we only recently started to do this?
Combination of things. But also it's, this is a modern day question, with which pharmaceutical companies want us to, to start it, it's the same with breathing as well.
I mean, this is such a big business. All the pharmaceutical thing, they just produce and then they put all the medicine into us. It's ridiculous.
As an example, so I know people that have sort of autoimmune issues. One is called fibromyalgia, and this is basically the white blood cells being produced at a crazy rate in the body, and it starts attacking the immune system, and you get weakened like different things are happening inside the body. Well, I know that some people that have taken to the cold have all of the symptoms of this autoimmune issue have ceased to exist. And when we look at the studies that have been done, if you do just sort of like one, decent, like a full cold exposure, not a shower, but like actually getting in, submerging yourself in the water, the effects of this and the suppression of all those white blood cells in the body, the inflammatory markers, it's suppressed for about 6 to 7 days on average, so almost 1 week. So if you would only do one if you submerge yourself in the cold once per week, this is enough to kind of keep your white blood cells in check in a way.
So you can have a choice. You can do the cold exposure therapy, like a cold shower or a plunge or dip in the ice lake, or you can eat like pills every day for a week, and then you can make your choice in the certain particular situations. Yeah. Yeah,
and that's actually what it comes down to. Many people, like for whatever it is, they feel like it is easier to have the pills. It is actually easier for them to do that than to take the time and move on a Monday morning, for example, to go down to the cold. And there's no judgment on that. It's just that like everyone have to make their own choice about what they need, what gives them the most value.
This is super good. So you mentioned easier, and that's what I see, let's say, the problem in nowadays, and also the problem that, stops people from starting those, cold showers. Everybody knows about the cold showers, but then this inner voice that tells you like, no, you'll be fine. You can have a hot shower or warm shower, or it will be all right. Do you have any tips? So let's say for myself, how do I, overcome this inner voice, and how I start doing it?
Well, this is the thing that gets asked a lot. And actually, it was funny because I found it kind of weird that I was asked to be on like a TV show, which was called Superhumans. Yeah. And then the whole idea is, of course, the cold is like some superpower, or how someone can stay in the cold water is some kind of superpower. And this was kind of like almost absurd to me, because I feel like my work is a big portion of my work as a coach and working with people is like removing as many of the excuses away. And then the people don't have this kind of clouded vision about like, I can't do this and I'm limited by that. So if I can say that, like the real superpower is a little bit like not giving a fuck so much, like not caring so much and just being adventurous with it. That's that's kind of like the secret sauce in a way. But then part of that is also trusting the body and understanding that everything that happens in the body, the fingers getting cold and the toes getting cold, that's exactly how it's supposed to work. So when you are able to feel that inside yourself and have trust in your own body, which, let's face it, not many people have that that relationship, that healthy relationship, then you kind of like, it makes everything easier. You know that this is a process. You know that the fingers and toes go cold. You know that eventually it'll warm up. You know that it'll take your breath away. You can kind of segment the whole thing into one process and be like, okay, it's easier like this. But, we are creatures of comfort anyway, right? Like all of, whether it's the couches, whether it's these kind of clothes, all of the things that are around us, we are sort of, we've kind of in a way earned that life, that comfort. If you want to go back, we don't have to have spears hunting the food and roosting, all that sort of stuff. So, we kind of earned that comfort in as a species in a way, but actually we've gotten further away from what has given us this kind of resiliency as well. And never before have we had this much disease. So there is a correlation between those two things. So getting up and choosing, like we say a little bit, like with my friends, we call it choosing violence. Yeah. Like wake up on a Monday morning and get down to the Baltic Sea. We choose violence today because nobody truly wants to be there in a way, but we do want to be there. Yeah.
Amazing. So my experience with let's say cold exposure, of course, I've done this traditional Finnish sauna and then dip into the ice waters. Love it. Super good as experience, as entertainment even. Yeah. It's super cool. And then recently, in the beginning of the summer, I've started the cold showers. And first it was hard, and also I didn't do it like every day. but I've kind of slowly got myself into, and it was mostly based on the wheel. So I wanted to do it, and I wanted to get this to routine. So, and then I got now 2 weeks. I'm not doing it because of recent sickness. So then I kind of figure out, okay, maybe I need to pause down. But then also I feel that I really want to get back on it. So the outcome of like my observation and reflection is that further you go, more you like it, and then you kind of like it and you cannot live without that. And then also while preparing to this podcast, I've learned it is something to do with the dopamine. So
For sure.
do we have a release of a dopamine when we have
Yes.
cold showers, let's say?
Yeah. Yeah, so mood is like one of the key benefits of the cold, like in a way like this, it's a biological thing happening. It's a chemical reaction in the body, but it's definitely sort of related to mental state, right? It's like the mood enhancement, if you want to call it something. Yeah, the body gets like dopamine is kind of like pumped through the body because of this, like it's a reward hormone in a way. It's like, okay, you did something good, you know? But then when you think about other hormones that are produced as well, like adrenaline, you get this kind of, like adrenaline's glucose, right? It secretes from the adrenal glands and it's kind of like present in this fight or flight response. So obviously when you go in a cold water, your body is sort of sensing that there's a threat. Your homeostatic state is sort of like threatened in a way, like this balance, this comfort, this survival mode. And of course your body gives you these kind of like resources in a way to kind of handle this. Do I need to fight this? Do I need to run away from this, fight or flight?
Yeah.
Or in some cases, people freeze, not in the freeze like cold freeze, but like just stay still or become innate. So yeah, the body is producing all these hormones, and then, you know, dopamine's one of those ones that people have, you know, it's this addictive thing in a way. It kind of like keeps you coming back to that. And incidentally, people in Finland, like coffee, for example, people are drinking so much coffee here in Finland, about 4 cups per day on average, the most of any country in the world. Caffeine is a really, really good carrier of dopamine as a chemical. So it actually benefits you if you have coffee like 1 hour before, like a black coffee, 1 hour before you do your cold, because when the dopamine is produced in the body, the caffeine carries that for a longer period of time throughout the day. So you feel happier longer.
Yeah. This sounds so cool. I'm just imagining how, you know, if you drink the coffee and coffee is kind of transporting this all the dopamine, and then you go to cold exposure and then you have this, you know, the dopamine, adrenaline, and then it just transports everywhere to your body.
Yeah.
But then just something I just wanted to highlight. It's amazing when you think of it. Like, okay, it is hard to do the cold shower or it's hard to do the ice dip in the morning, right? But then if you actually do, it is such a morning starter. You just get the injection of adrenaline and dopamine straight away. And then I think, you know, nothing can stop you. And then yourself, do you do like every morning?
Not every morning,
Right.
Not every morning. In the peak of winter, like I'll go every day.
Yeah.
Every day, but it's not every morning.
Yeah.
Sometimes life happens, you know. I go with the flow a little bit. Like if I know that I've got to be somewhere in the morning and it might not be beneficial, like if, you know, like to be a bit shaky, because sometimes I stay and swim around for a while.
Like this.
Yeah, and also the natural, you know, it's quite natural to shake anyway, right? So if you stay in there for 10 or 15 minutes, your body is like trying to produce that energy, and you do have a bit of that natural shake. So if I'm presenting or giving some kind of talk, you know, I might not want that kind of shaky kind of like, you know, like eyes wide open kind of energy, you know. So but most mornings, I love it in the morning, especially because it does actually in a way replace a coffee too. You don't have to have the coffee so early, and also it's so dark here. It's so dark here, and it's like you kind of feel like without the dopamine, you feel like a reward there. The reward is that you're kind of up. You're ready, you're attacking the day. You know, in my case, I like to go with a couple of friends on most days, but not everyone's brave enough to come every morning. So it's often I'm either by myself or, you know, with someone else. And we just go there and we do it. And it's kind of like part of life now.
Amazing. No, this sounds so good. I wish, you know, we more and more get the similar rituals. Something else I know that you are working on the book.
Yes.
Would you tell us more about the book? So what should we expect?
Yeah, the book is like, so breathing became such an important thing. And I would say that for me, the first time I truly meditated away from being in the ice or in the cold water was when I just took time aside to breathe, My mind is like running, like many people's. And if you ask me to think of like, if you just don't think of anything, like I'll go into this mode here and I'll be like, don't think of anything, and then my mind is like, okay, listen, you're repeating, don't think of anything to yourself. And that's something, so you've already blown the meditation, So for me, focusing on just counting breaths, like 1, 2, 3, or counting down and doing some pauses and things, it was a very profound thing. And I would say like the first time I actually really had a very spiritual experience was from the breathing. And of course I studied with some of the world's most recognized modern day like savants of breath work. And what I noticed is that most of the breathing and breath work philosophy has always come from the East, from Asia in a way. And if we want to say Russia is part of Asia as well, like from this part of the world. And it always refers to Zen Buddhism. It always refers to like this kind of like pranayama from Hinduism, from India and Japan and China in a way. But like, where's the modern day philosophy? So through my journey, I found out that actually there's space to talk about this on a more modern day, like in a more modern way, I would say. But of course, paying homage to the Eastern philosophy. And so when I look through the language of what does, like when we look at the respiration, it means, respiratory system. It's the respiration in the body. When you look at Latin, spirare is the word that means spirit, and translated to English, it means breathe. So spirit equals breath. And then we look at inspiration. It's like to breathe in. So when we're inspired, we breathe in. When we breathe together with people, we conspire, co-inspire, getting inspired together as we breathe. And then when we are with other people, we get good ideas, and we want to like have goals and get somewhere in life and make our mark in this world. And that's how we aspire. We breathe upon or breathe towards something. And in order to get to that place, we need to perspire, which means to breathe through something, breathe through some kind of like situations or make effort towards something. And eventually we will expire, which is taking the last breath. So the book is very much about kind of like telling the story of breath through the language. And it's kind of like a story of like personal responsibility, because we are all responsible for our own breathing. It happens autonomously, but at any time we can decide, I want to breathe this way. When you're in the gym, you can kind of grab the breath and like, breathe like really hard and push the weight or run faster or whatever you like. But then we can always go the opposite way as well. And how we actually breathe is how we connect with other people too. So we've seen it throughout history where like, rowing the boat together, choir singing together, people dancing in different cultures, but then also when you're intimate with somebody as well, like all of the systems in the body that are related and influenced by the breath. So your energy production, hormone production, digestive system, nervous system, lymphatic system, emotions, feelings, heart rate, everything is linked up via the breath. So that's why it feels so special when you're with somebody and you're so intimate, because all of those systems in the body are synchronized with another human being. And so that's what I'm doing a lot more, is recreating those moments where different people can kind of experience those things, not in a totally intimate way. That's a special thing when you're one-on-one, but like in a group setting, you can kind of recreate this on a more sort of like collective level. And not only is it responsibility, but I'm like here to find the link between us all. I think there's too much segmentation and fragmentation throughout all these different cultures and different parts of the world. And we're all talking. If you ask somebody, are you a spiritual person? They will most likely say yes, but on some level. It might be that they have a spiritual relationship with God, whichever their God is. It might be that they have a spiritual relationship with the planet, with Mother Earth. It might be that they have a spiritual relationship with, love and light and whatever else. But if we actually look at the meaning of what spirit means, it actually means breath. And so I feel like this is the connecting factor that we have. So my story is really about connecting us all together, and we are already connected by the breath itself.
Yeah, what I feel, and maybe you can, tune me a bit, is that the breathing is somehow under-recognized, or at least that's what I've noticed. So somehow I was living a life, and then I figure out okay, breathing actually impacts meditation, or the mindfulness is used there. Then also recently I figure out that breathing impacts your voice, the way you sound. So then also we know that, like you mentioned, the breathing impacts physical and endurance and all those topics. And then in the gym, if you need to breathe somehow correctly,
yeah.
Right? And then also breathing is one of those things that we need to have, because if we stop breathing, we expire, as you said.
Yeah.
So it's not working anymore. So what do you think? Is this under-recognized and is coming out from the shade now, or is this the tendency?
Yeah, never before has there been this much attention towards the breath, right? We just came from a couple of years' time where there was literally a particular virus that was attacking the respiratory system in people, right? And was being spread through this system. So, now from the way that people have seen this and experienced, everyone had some form of experience with that virus, for example. There's a lot more attention and people want to understand how it works. And like I said before, we all have the possibility to do something about it. We can choose to be go from the passenger seat, as I'm always saying. Breathing is you're in the vehicle, and autonomous breathing is just you're going along for the ride in the passenger seat. But when you're actually conscious about breathing, we're in the driver's seat and we're kind of breathing how we want to turn up in this life. And that's the most important thing. I'm kind of a big, any more consciousness and more awareness in what we're doing is a good thing. What we put in our bodies, what relationships we have, what we're doing in work and how we're spending our time. Having more awareness in general is a really good thing. But if you really stop to think about it, how do you, what's the first step you take when you're trying to find that present moment?
You breathe.
You breathe. Yeah. You find the breath. You can't breathe for the past. It's happened. You can't breathe for the future. It's not here yet. You can only breathe for the present moment now. And so no matter what we're doing, whether it is sports or the yoga class or, connecting with people or finding your voice and projecting your voice, speaking, sharing, singing, expressing yourself in this life, you must breathe. You must breathe. So, it's the start and end of everything in a way, as these words, respiration, respire, breathe, and then expire, and there's a lot of things that happen in between. But it's the number one thing we can grab onto at any time to change things or to move towards something.
Do you have on top of your mind some breathe practice that could bring maybe me and you and our listeners to a conscious state of moment, right now? Could we do something?
Yeah, of course.
Together with everybody who's listening?
Yeah, well, I would say that there's a two-part thing. So there would be just asking anyone who's watching or listening this, you would just, wherever you are, just if you're sitting down, for example, you can be laying down as well, not driving a car or anything like this, but just closing your eyes for a moment and just sort of starting to connect with your own breath, and just feeling the air, move inside the body because you actually have to pull the air in. It's not happening by itself, so it's a physical thing. And you can kind of start to connect with the parts of the body that are working together to make the breath happen. So that might be the chest, might be the rib cage, which is kind of expanding on the inhale. You might feel the diaphragm a little bit. So once you start connecting with these parts of the body, you realize that there's this nice little symphony happening in the body where everything needs to kind of work together. On the exhale, it kind of falls out by itself. So we can kind of breathe in, but then on the exhale, it just falls out by itself. So you can practice this for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 breaths. And then eventually we can start to shape the breath a little bit. And one easy exercise, and we can just do one round of this, it's called like a 4, 7, 8 breathing technique. And that's where we would breathe in for 4 seconds. We take a little pause, relaxing the body, not holding anything inside the body, but just in between an inhale and the exhale. We would pause for about 7 seconds. Then on the exhale, there'd be like 8 seconds exhale. But the tip here is that you would basically wrap your lips around the breath, the inhale and the exhale. So it's kind of like breathing in through a straw. So we can actually, let's do this one round together.
Let's do it.
So in 3, 2, 1, we're breathing in for 4 seconds. And into a pause. So relaxing the body, just relaxing the body. 4, 5, 6, 7. Now exhaling through the lips like you're kind of blowing through a straw, just controlling the airflow for 8 seconds. Slowing everything down like this. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then you would go back to the inhale. So breathing in for 4 seconds. 2, 3, 4. Into the pause, relaxing all the body, just kind of hanging out there in between. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and now exhaling through the lips slowly, just like this for about 8 seconds. 5, 6, 7, and 8. And just return to your natural rate of breath. So the nice thing about this one is that like you certainly get the air in, like you get like good solid breath in, but the pause is the really interesting part. Because actually the trigger for the body, to release oxygen inside the bloodstream is the rising level of CO2. So our body, in that pause, we're still generating CO2. CO2 level kind of gently rises and gives the signal to release the oxygen. So it feels nice. But then we go to the exhale. The exhale is a lengthy one, a long one, and that's kind of calming the nervous system and stimulating the vagus nerve, which is kind of has a direct correlation with your heart rate. Yeah. So it kind of slows everything down. And you can kind of feel straight away that it sort of slows everything.
It's interesting. So when it was like the inhale and then it was a pause, on the pause, I somehow felt in the moment. So, and because I don't know, so on the inhale, I was busy with inhaling, but then when the pause happened, somehow I've kind of like, okay, I'm here now. I'm kind of plugged in. So that's what happened in my brain now.
Yeah, exactly. And if you even look at the breath, I mean, like it's, this pulling the air in, it's the physical, in many ways, it's kind of the masculine way, it's like, okay, like that's the active part. Mm-hmm. And then in a way, the exhale is very kind of like letting go and softer, like, or it can happen by itself. In a way, that's considered a little bit more like, in a way, feminine, like having this kind of gentle touch. And somehow when the two come together, it's kind of like that almost a mix of the two, because we all have that kind of like duality inside the body. And yeah, absolutely. The pausing and having those moments of like usually we have some stimulus around us. There's no music here, there's no anything disrupting us. And sometimes not breathing or doing the pause is actually the best thing to do, because then we know that we get the oxygen released in the body, and it feels good. It feels, like you said, you're here now.
Yeah, super interesting. So it's not only about breathing and how you're breathing, but also how you're not breathing. And it's all coming up in your next book. I'm really looking forward for that. And I could really continue speaking with you like forever. But then the last thing that we really need to touch on is that you also do this cold exposure retreats where you take people somewhere to the forest and then you force them to dive into the cold water. Is that what you do to people?
There's no force. There's no force in these things. But that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. Like, it's funny because you mentioned it was a nice segue into that because when you're going under the water, when you're doing the ice diving, you're literally asking someone to go in cold water. There's a roof of thick ice above. You have to hold the breath, so kind of not breathing in a way, which can be quite scary. You're in an enclosed space, which can be also representative of another fear. It's a little bit dark when you really look down. It can look a bit dark down there. And you're basically asking someone to go into a situation of like all of these like uncertainty thing, all these uncertain aspects. And, we spend a lot of time during this weekend to get people so comfortable with the cold, to understand what happens inside the body when you're in the cold and how to warm back up yourself, But then also the breathing part. And as you know, like breathing when you go into the cold changes, and we can take control of that. But then when you're under the water, it's a different thing. You have to a little bit surrender to that. And the way you can surrender into that process is to trust your own body. So it's really about the kind of guidance and also the community, right? Like you have like 12, 13 other people with you that are sort of, the learning is kind of increased and enhanced with all the questions that people ask, and people can kind of confirm like, did you feel that too? And so together we all get there, and we spend the first 2 days going through all of the science and all of the techniques and the actual practicalities. And then on the Sunday, the last day, everyone's ready to go under the water, and everyone's quite excited about it. And they do it multiple times too.
Multiple times.
Yeah,
And
so
also,
no force.
No force.
Everyone's there on their own.
And something else I thought right now, so this might be the good way for someone to get into the cold exposure. So it sounds like you're really taking care of everything during this program, and then you are there facilitating. So then let's say if somebody wants to get into cold exposure, wants to start those, cold showers and then dipping in ice water, so they could come to this retreat.
For sure.
And then get experience of everything. So when are those happening?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's for everybody, right?
Yeah.
These are like so open for everybody. Like there's like a lot of people think that because it's ice diving, that it's actually you need to be some expert or some professional or whatsoever. And I think, everyone has some varying levels of experience with the cold. But actually we've had people that have never been in like ice water before. They might have had a cold shower. They might have just stayed outside too long in some instances. And they've been able to do that. So yeah, it's funny. It's so fun to watch someone go through the journey and grow through that, and then they also get the dopamine and all those kind of like those feel good and happy hormones throughout the weekend. So yeah, we're doing those throughout winter. First one's coming up midway through January, and 12th to the 14th of January. Yeah, and they're so much fun. They're so much fun. It's one way to enjoy the winter too, and not sort of stay inside at home and just kind of wait for the white stuff to go away.
Cool. Where do you know more about this?
Coldexposurefinland.com is where to find out. Yeah, we have a lot of information there, and there's other different kind of workshops coming up around the cold as well.
So, and how do I know more about yourself? So where should people go and check your things?
Yeah, LeighEwin.com, and then on Instagram, for example, Leigh Ewin. No gaps in between, just one word like that. I'm pretty good at responding on there. So
cool. And then also in the show notes, I'm gonna put the links also there if somebody is super interested. Everybody, please go check out his Instagram, full of videos and information and everything. And then also Cold Exposure Finland. And then we are really looking forward for your book, because it might be a game changer in the world of breath. I think that's the pod. Everything. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your coming.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate you, man.
Cool. Please like and subscribe wherever you're watching, and stay tuned for the next episode. Bye.
Got it flooded to my ankles, need a raincoat. Pair of boots and a dang bow, gotta stay flow. I might pull up in a stagecoach playing Beethoven. Whoa.